500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die."
The Phantom,
the ghost who walks,
the Phantom,
enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't mind the Phantom, he finds you.
G'day everyone, and for those who came in late, you're listening to Expand, the Phantom Podcast. This is episode 148, Comics and News. My name is Dan Fraser and I'm joined today by Stephen East and Jermaine Parker. How are you, Stephen?
I'm very well, thank you, Dan. And yourself?
Yeah, really good, mate. Thank you for joining us and really happy to be talking fandom tonight. And Jermaine, yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm here. It's good. It's good to talk fandom. It's good to escape away from the trials of life and have a
absolutely. And look, we cannot go any further in the March Comics and News, March of 2020, without mentioning briefly what's going on in the world and acknowledging the COVID-19 virus, because of course it's affecting all of our everyday lives. And Chronicle Chamber, other than Jermaine, who's just obsessed, we probably had to take a step back necessarily from the podcast and the website a little bit, because real life is ramping up in the preparation for possibly real life ramping down again. We just don't know, and nobody knows at this stage. We do know from a fandom perspective, though, it's really important to acknowledge the people who are affected by this virus all around the world. And I'd like to start, gents, if you don't mind, with talking about the Italian artists who have contributed. Italy fans in general, but because of the artists who have contributed to the Bushfire Appeal book, Massimo Gamberi, Luca, Cero, Sal, Paolo, and Don, all artists who identify as Italian and have Italian families. And Anthony Gillies, I know you have many Italian friends, and so many of the world who have connections to Italy and the horror that they're going through at the moment. There's that, of course, and we know from watching social media and all the rest of it, and the news, that lots of other fandom people are affected around the world. Anyone who follows Mike Manley on social media, on Facebook, knows that he's very concerned about what's going on. We don't hear a great deal from Tony DePaul, the author, whereas Mike's the artist, the author on the daily strips, but we know that Tony DePaul is in America and is recovering from cancer at the moment, or fighting against cancer at the moment, which clearly puts him in a vulnerable category, so he would be massively worried. Other fans and older fans, the fandom we know is the fandom we know is a character that is beloved largely by older fans, and so lots of them will be worried as well, and so we acknowledge that. And even through publications in Australia, just even today, have acknowledged that they're going to be working from home for the near future, and the effect that might have on the publishing and the subscribers. And that's a very small part of the big problem globally. But there's just a lot of fandom people affected at the moment. So we hope that everybody is able to find their own deep woods and go back into that, keep into their own skull cave and socially distance from everybody in that way. And we just hope that while you're in isolation, if that's what you need to be, that you can find your own Chronicle Chamber and read the comics. Get back in touch with your fandoming. I know that if I was in isolation, I'd have probably at least one of my 2 weeks would be spent cleaning up my skull cave and filing my comics and all the rest of it. So hopefully there's some entertainment there. We know that Sydney Supernova and Leafold Memorial Bengali Explorers Club dinner is likely to be cancelled. Those haven't come through at the moment, but it's hard to see how they go forward in the present space. So, gents, just a really quick word from you guys before we move forward about all of that and the way that the current climate is affecting fandoming in general.
And Free Comic Book Day has been postponed as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
I guess just be safe. Use this as an excuse to read some fandom comics. I was talking to Ivan, who we actually mentioned in the last podcast, and he's been digging out some Phantom comics. He dug out all the Moberg Mitten Phantom stories and reread those because of a post that we put up on Facebook. So just be safe. But I guess the big thing is we want this to be a nice escapism, this podcast, and I guess we're not going to dwell this. We want to get it all out at the front, and then we can just have some fun. Let's have some fun and be safe at the same time.
Yep, absolutely. So I guess wash your hands, sit down and put the freshly sanitized headphones on and just enjoy the rest of the podcast is what we're saying. So it is a comics and news podcast, gents, where we're going to review and look back at all the news that's happened since our last comics and news podcast, which I guess is half of February and most of March now. And look at what's been going on in the fandom world. Now, Jermaine has put the run sheet together, and I'm going through it. And first up, we have the Bushfire Book. So, Bushfire Appeal Fundraiser. The book, I've already shown it once, and I'll mention it again now. And if you're on YouTube, you can see the book as that I'm holding up there. But guys, we're now well and truly into the fundraiser, and with all of the other things that are going on in the world, we're probably coming to the end of the fundraiser as well. What have been your experiences with what we've been up to?
Overwhelmingly positive. Everyone who's seen the book that I've shown it off to has been blown away from it. From my 6-year-old to the lady who runs a local comic shop, to a teacher at work who was a former fan back when he was younger, and he's now about 68 or something. And I showed it to him just the other day, and he thought, "You guys did this?" I said, "Yeah, me and a couple of mates. We sit around and talk Phantom." "I haven't talked Phantom in ages," he's saying, and he's so it's overwhelmingly positive, and big shout out if any of my family are listening now that they've picked up the Phantom book. Thank you once again for picking up the Phantom Bushfire fundraiser.
Yeah, it's been fun. Overall it's been fun. Just been enjoying, I guess, just getting to meet and communicate with some new artists that you haven't spoken to or haven't connected with before. So that's always been good. It's been a long time dream of mine. I remember would have been 12 and I started drawing my own Phantom story. It was actually how Labunga died and lost the presidency. I will admit he got his head chopped off. He didn't die the way in the free comic. There might have been a little bit of Braveheart influence there, with the old basket, and they lifted it up and there was the head. So,
geez, I wasn't watching Braveheart when I was 12.
So it was. It's always been a long time dream of mine to produce something licensed. So that, from a personal point of view, it's been good. But I guess from an overall point of view, being able to raise 20,000 plus for that's just that's a dream.
Incredible, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it is. We've said it before. We might be able to donate $50 or $100 here, but basically because we were able to get together, we were able to produce $20,000 collectively as a group, and that's huge.
And that's that figure's accurate to about 10 days ago. I think was the last time. 7 days ago was the last time we actually put the sums together again. There's still and up front there's right now 75 books still available as we record this at 10 p.m. Queensland time on the 20th of March. So if you are keen on one of those Bushfire books, they are running out. I know that in the TV news segment, one of the clips they chose to play of mine was the fact that we might do a second print. I think we can put that off the table now, don't you guys? We're not going to do a second print. There will only ever be 400 copies of this book.
Yeah, and it was something we've debated about long and hard. We've looked at the positives. We've looked at the negatives. We've looked at doing a hardcover edition. We've looked at doing...
and that's not off the table, must be said.
We've looked at doing badges, stickers, and all that type of stuff. But I guess just with today's climate, we just thought, let's just do these. We'll sell these 400. And then I guess, like you said, we may look at doing a limited edition hardcover down the track, but at this stage,
I suppose one of the ways we'd know for sure if the fandom community was keen on badges, stickers, a hardcover version, prints, whatever of the book, then by all means email us at chroniclechamber@gmail.com. The people who are listening to this are the most hardcore fans. We're not going to print another version of the book that or do a second print run as it stands. Maybe a really limited edition of what are we talking, 25, 30 hardcover books maybe.
If the demand's there.
If the demand's there, that's exactly right. So
if you want it, you need to let us know.
Correct. Yeah, very good. I think, it was a bit of a milestone today where we had our 200th order for the book come in online, which was pretty cool just to see it tick over there. I don't know at what point we'll do this to celebrate, and maybe you've got some ideas, Jem, because you put this down, but we do have the original art for Keith Williams's contribution to the Bushfire book. And that will go up as a faffle. So whether we do that to maybe celebrate the last book, and I'm just saying this for the first time, question without notice, gents, didn't flag this at all, just sort of thought of this 5 minutes ago. Maybe we do this to celebrate the last book being sold, or at some other point in the not too distant future, and do this as another one of the faffles that was so successful about a month ago.
Just bring it a little bit closer for those who are on YouTube. We'll be able to have a bit of a look. There's a bit of a glare. Is there like a plastic sheet on it or something?
There is a plastic sheet here. I'll just take that off. Sorry. I'm looking at the run sheet, not the artwork. So,
so if you're on YouTube, go have a look. Dan, you do some speaking so that way people can look at it.
Sorry, I should have had it this way the whole time along, but you can see there, and it's on page, and I'll just drop this down very quickly while I find it in the book. It's on page 47, so you can see there that it is an artwork that's been published in this book, and if that is something that floats your boat, anyway, just keep an eye on our Facebook and our Twitter and our Instagram, because that will be coming up as a faffle at some point in the next little while.
Yeah, awesome.
Very good. On Bushfire fundraisers, did you guys check out the Australian Birds? I know it's not our book, but we're not the only ones who have done a Bushfire book. There's also Australia Burns that's come out. Have you guys checked that one out and had a look?
Mine arrived today, and I haven't opened it yet because I'm tempted to do some sort of reactions video, to be honest. So it's in there. What about you, Jim?
No, mine hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah.
I've been late in ordering it.
Well, mine was at my local comic shop, and I haven't. There's a couple of prose stories in there that I haven't read, but plenty of comic stories and plenty of poster type prints. I enjoyed it. There's plenty of friends of the fandom in here, friends of the podcast. Jamie Johnson, of course, he's on the inside cover. You may have seen that on his socials. He has shared that one about Andrew O'Dwyer, but he's also got another one inside the book. Also, Dale McCanty, his story was a real tearjerker in this one. I don't want to say too much, Dan, because if you're going to do a reaction to it, I don't want to. Have
at it, mate. It's only going to be people who watch 20 minutes into the YouTube who see this. So no, show us what you've got.
I don't have that much. I was just going to say a little bit about the people who have contributed not only to our fundraiser, but have also done double duty and contributed to the more general comic book in Australia Burns. So big shout out for those people who did double duty. Of course, Grange Wallace
and Dean Rankin would be another two that I know have contributed.
That's exactly right. And Grange has got the reverse cover, the back cover.
Oh, cool.
There with Killaroo.
I think the front cover's Camilio, isn't he?
He's another one who's contributed to both for sure.
Yep, Camillo. You are correct.
So there you go. They got the Phantom artist to be the
plenty of Phantom artists in there.
The front and the back.
Front, the back, and the inside, because they know that they're the better ones. So
absolutely.
And I know Tom Taylor's a real famous fellow, and I do like his work, and we got it like with the Injustice comics and what he's done with The Deep, which is a kids comic, but his story at the end kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But the rest of it's great.
Fair enough.
Mm.
All right. Very good. I've got distracted and I'm watching the YouTube video now of Steve showing us that. So Mikaels card game. Well, let's move on from the Bushfire book. We have got Mikael Lyck from Sweden, who friend of the podcast has, and you'll hear him later when he talks about the Swedish books. He's releasing a card game, and we've got some really exciting news about the timing of that. And as with everything, obviously, asterisks pending the future, but there's plans at the moment anyway. Jermaine, do you want to give us a bit of a spiel about that?
Well, I think Mikael actually is going to be recording something about it, so we'll handball it off to Mikael.
Hi, it's me, Mikael here. I usually give you some short reviews of the Swedish Fantomen publications. But as I hope most of you know, I'm also working on the Phantom the card game, a 1-to-2 player co-op game with a strong theme and a rich campaign. If you want this game to become a reality, I need your help. On the 1st of May the Kickstarter will open for business, and it's crucial to get a lot of backers early in the campaign for the algorithms to generate more traction. If you want more information about the game, search Facebook for the Phantom the card game and follow the page. And to get even more information, join the newsletter. That link is also on the Facebook page. Thank you for listening, and happy Phantoming.
Thanks, Mikael. How awesome does that sound, guys?
Oh, mate, I'm really excited. May is my birthday month, and my birthday is right at... Is it? Oh, there you go. Well, mine's
18.
right at the end.
I'm in the middle.
Okay, so hopefully, or somewhere around the middle, we have certainly covered the Kickstarter tally to get it produced, and by my day, right at the end, 31st, we are locked in and getting all of the pledge levels and bonus stuff that might come with the Kickstarter. Very exciting.
Yeah, it is. My daughter's in the middle as well, 14th. So yeah, now there's something cool coming out soon which will be just for the Kickstarter. So when we get those, we'll do a proper announcement for that. Now, would
it be worth saying, Jermaine, that it'd be a good idea to be a Patreon at that time, at the 1st of May?
Yeah, you want to be a Patreon. Okay, so we kind of gave something a little way last time, so let's give it a little bit more away. So basically, what it is, it's a card game, and for those who don't know, you use your cards and you can put stuff down to progress in the game. There's going to be a special limited card that can be played in that game, and only the Patreons will get it.
I love that. This is perhaps the best. And I know Patreons have only just had their name produced in the Bushfire book and all that sort of stuff, but I think this is, look, if you're listening and you've ever been, oh, maybe I should be on Patreon, this is a really good idea. This is a good time to jump on board. With the only exception that the Australian dollar is currently as bad as it's ever been against the US dollars, and Patreon subscribers are in US dollars. While the Phantom Preservation Project, the P3, is only available to $5 subscribers, this offer is going to be to every subscriber, whether it's $1 a month or $100 a month, whatever you can afford.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So no, that's pretty exciting. We'll do a proper announcement of that when we get them. They have been printed. They have been delivered to Mikael, and then they'll be delivered to us in Australia in the very near future. So we've just been sorting that out as well. So it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. And we've got two special podcasts coming up, which will be in relation to the Kickstarter as well. So that will be fun as well.
Very, very much looking forward to that. All right, let's move on. The next item of news here is the Cy Barry print that I guess is the new one. I guess we haven't really talked about this, and let me know. Is that glossy or glary or whatever, guys?
No,
That looks pretty good.
Perfect. So this is the Cy Barry print that has become available. It's a 14 by 8, I think, is the inch dimensions. It's a bit under A3 in, I guess, a more global scale. So Cy has these available on his website. And the other way that I would encourage, personally, of course, I would encourage Australian listeners to contact me personally, because I do have a number of these that I can send you with Australian postage cost only, not postage from America. So a bit of savings there.
So how much are they then?
That's a great question. I've been saying 150 Australian, but to be honest, the way that the dollar's crumbled, it probably should be. Get in touch with me and I'll let you know. But 150, 160 Australian dollars.
No worries. How many got left?
Well, Sai sent me over 25, so 1 through to 25 of 50, and they're all signed and numbered, as you might be able to see there. And there are currently, what's 25 minus 8? 13? 17. Whatever, 17. 25 minus 8 left at the moment. So if you're keen, there are numbers there that are available. So just get in touch, awesome. And we can send it your way. I do appreciate it's bad timing in the sense of the global economy and all the rest of it, and people's personal economies. But it is what it is.
You're keeping them safe. They're not going anywhere unless someone buys them.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
That's exactly right. Yep. All right. The next thing we need to talk about is little toys, phantom toys, and this is how you know that you are in a zone that nothing else matters. We can just talk about toys. So we're talking about the boss fight figures, who you may have heard from in episode 146. Was it? Because we've had 147 released since Mike Bullock. 146 was Eric Arana when we talked to the designer of the boss fight toys. So the release dates for that have been, well, the proposed release dates for that have been announced, and also the NECA toys. Jermaine, do you want to tell us a little bit about those?
Well, listen to the podcast if you want the release dates for boss fights. And NECA toys are at the end of 2020. Now, that isn't an official, but they have kind of let it slip to us. That it is at the end of 2020 is what they're looking at it to be released. And of course, NECA is the Defenders of the Earth, which features Phantom, Flash, Mandrake, and Ming, and Loafer. So I think that's 5. So they're pretty cool. And that's the 6-inch, where boss fights is the 4-inch. And if you're interested, and if you're wondering if size matters, listen to Boss Fight, because that is one of the Boss Fight podcasts, because that is one of the discussions we talk about the comparison between a 4-inch and a 6-inch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, it raises an interesting point. As a collector, Boss Fight we talked about extensively, and I think as a collectors we'll probably get most of what they offer because it's very much in the Phantom universe. NECA toys, you've just said, are the 5 different figures, only one of which is the Phantom. So what I would definitely buy the Phantom figure. Probably would get the other 4. Where do you guys stand?
I'd be getting the set if I can afford it.
Yeah,
all 5. Yep.
Yeah, I'll be looking at getting the set as well. I guess purely because every time I don't get the set and then they become hard to get, I kind of regret it later. So the chances are I'll be getting the set. But today's economy and today's society, this is 9-10 months away, so things will hopefully be different then. But that's the plan. But whether it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're still not mentioning the C word, but it is going to have an impact, and whether the end of 2020 remains the same or if we're suddenly looking deep into 2021. But anyway, to watch this space, I'm just curious to know that in this time, how much money are you planning on putting away for these toys? We don't know what the price point for them or anything is, but as I say. Yeah, I'm a happy Phantom collector, and I've got very little of anything else, and I don't have that that little part of the back of my head that sort of says, "Oh, you didn't get Mandrake and you didn't get Lothar," that other people will have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I guess it'll be interesting to see, like, if there's a we are in communications with NECA, and we've discussed with them that we want to do a podcast with them and stuff. And we, obviously it's a larger company, so there's more people to talk to try and get to where we were. With Eric, it's just you talk to the boss and he's there. So there's a few more hoops to jump through with that one. It'll be interesting, I guess, just talking to them how they plan to sell it, whether they are just figurines in a box, or whether you can buy the set, or whether they have extras and stuff like that. I know they have extras and play sets with their Ninja Turtle range and some of their other ranges. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens or not.
Yep. Very cool. All right. Now, Steve, you are our go-to man on the next topic, which is the Comics Kingdom website. And I know you check it religiously, and you've actually put up a video for us recently on YouTube and written a little bit of a story that people can go and check out on chroniclechamber.com. But can you tell us, what was it, 2 weeks ago you noticed something different with the Comics Kingdom website?
Yeah, it would have been 2 weeks ago. So on a Sunday is the only day that my local paper doesn't carry the Phantom, and I get my local paper digitally, like probably a lot of other people do, and because of my job I get it very cheap digitally. But on Sunday I've got to rely on Comics Kingdom, and I have done for the last number of years. But a couple of weeks ago, I got onto it and realised, or number one, that the Phantom is now under T for the Phantom rather than P for Phantom, which is okay. I didn't mind that. I was just happy it was still there, because when it was under the P, I had a slight little
a little moment.
Yeah, a little moment. I thought, oh, hopefully it's under T for the Phantom, and yep, of course, there it was. Clicked on it, and the Sunday came up in all its glory, and then I touched on the image on the actual comic to try and blow it up a bit. And yeah, it went in scroll form in a vertical manner, and it worked. It really worked really well. There's times where I remember it's kind of tried to do it before, and it got a little bit buggy and would zoom in then zoom out, and it was a bit weird. But a fortnight ago, and then again last Sunday, couldn't fault it at all. I thought it worked really, really well, and it was very smooth and user-friendly. So King Features with their Comics Kingdom website have done all right with the Phantom on this one.
And that's something
that's
you can't
awesome.
always say. So yeah,
that's right. So props where props are due.
Exactly.
Oh, that is fantastic. And we've been saying for a while now that they need to make it a readable in that vertical format that people tend to scroll through on their phones, and even on Facebook on the desktop and that sort of thing, rather than having the for want of a better word, the landscape version of it, to have that be able to be scrolled through at a larger size immediately. It would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a heck of a lot more user friendly, rather than blowing up the landscape thing and then you're moving it across as you click and drag type thing as you're trying to read it, because you can't get all the panels in the same place. But yeah, to scroll through it the way it's set out now, like I said, you can't fault it. It's been very, very good.
Excellent, very good. All right, well, great pickup, Steve, and something that Jermaine and I wouldn't have noticed, because we don't engage with it in that way. But there's lots of different ways to Phantom, and we hope that you all find your own way. Another way that you might find to engage with the Phantom is if you're really keen on academic university level essays. And from scrolling through your Twitter feed, throw it through to right out the other end. Just recently, Robert Armand, who is a previous guest of the podcast, and I've just been scrolling through my feed.
101.
101, is it?
Yeah.
Politics in the Phantom, that's right. So episode 101 was our guest then was Robert Armand, who is a Swedish academic who has really been investigating the impact of the Phantom, I guess the connection between the Phantom and Swedish politics of the 1970s, and the way that the left was rising in Swedish politics and the fandom's influence and or fandom's influence on, or the way the fandom was influenced by, I guess, Swedish politics at that time. And so that book is out now. Jermaine, are you likely to buy the book?
I don't know, I might, but at this stage, I got a few other irons in the fire and a few other little things. But I reckon it might be something, because I've got the Kevin Patrick one, and I've read parts of that and I've enjoyed it. So it's an interesting discussion. On Facebook and social media, it generated some interesting, and I will say I was pleasantly surprised at the adult, sensible manner that the conversation was with all involved. Because let's face it, not everyone who reads the Phantom comic swings left. So it was good to see some mature discussions on there as well. So it's an interesting read. The bits that I've read, the conversations we've had with Robert on the podcast and elsewhere is interesting. So, maybe, when you're in ISO, it could be an interesting read.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Steve? Are you likely to get the book? Are you ducking back to revisit the podcast? How do you engage?
I would like. Probably go back and revisit the podcast would be a good one too. But yeah, I'd like to read the book. I'd like also to check out the Kevin Patrick. I actually don't have that one yet. I was meaning to get it, and then other things happened, and then kind of forgot about it. Then I thought, no, I really want to get that and have a read of it. So, and no stranger to the old academic essay, doing the masters and what have you. It's been a couple of years. So why not go and read another thesis? It's been get me back into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that Robert is just delighted to see his work in print now. He knows, and for those of you who don't know, when you produce a work like this, it's not for financial gain. There's no way, let's face it, there's no way there's a market in the world big enough to justify printing this if you are just about trying to make dollars. For him, it's just about getting his research out and read by more people, and being able to share what he's learned. And he's just excited at the prospect of doing that, and probably won't make a cent out of the book himself, is my understanding.
Yeah, we made a joke with us that he was hoping he might get enough to be able to shout himself some pizza.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, if you're keen on that book and helping Robert get some pizza, then head to chroniclechamber.com, scroll down the stories and find the one about the Phantom Comics and the New Left book, and the link will be there for you to see. So, all right,
just quickly, if you're interested in the Kevin Patrick podcast, that's episode 83.
Perfect. There you go. Thank you very much, Jim. All right, the next thing that we need to discuss is Fandom Wiki, because it has done the head-in of a few fans just recently, and even myself, when I was going to look at a few things for preparation for our podcast tonight, I noticed that it wasn't quite behaving the same way that it should. Jermaine, I understand you can share some news or a bit of insight on that.
Yeah, it was down a couple of days ago for a couple of hours. They needed to do an update, like a software update. That's been done. There's still a few little bugs to go, like some of the images are not showing, and stuff like that. But it works. It's a little bit harder to use, but it works. I won't say any more because I'm already putting Stephen to sleep.
Yeah, and we could all hear it, Steve.
Oh, sorry. I thought
all good.
I'm in shadow a little bit. I thought I could get away with it.
Throw you under the bus, mate.
Remember, I'm in the future. You guys are still in the past.
It's nearly midnight where you are, so we'll rock on. All right, very good. So Phantom Wiki still works. Keep checking it out. The data's still there. It's just the pictures that are struggling for me at the moment anyway. So don't stress too much about it, I guess, is the message there. All right, we're going to move on and move into publisher news now, and what might be coming up. and what is going on for various publishers. We're going to start with Malin, who is the publisher in Australia of the calendars and the diaries that have come out, I guess, sporadically over the last 20 years, which is 2 decades. That's a fair investment in the market. And they're proposing an 85th anniversary edition of their fandom diary. We've posted a couple of stories about this online, and Malin have been sending out emails to people who have suggested interest. I know that Stephen and Jermaine, you've both read the emails and seen the updates with some interest, I would think. What are your thoughts on the proposed 85th anniversary edition of the Malin diary?
Stephen, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. It's been a while since I looked at that.
I'm going to go off the long one now.
I remember we've discussed this a while ago, and we had a number of ideas. I think I even had a few ideas. Did they go to her? I can't remember now. It's been so long ago. Yeah, but you take your long run there, Jerm. You'll be able to voice.
I'm disappointed. I don't
know much about it.
Now, this is purely from a collector's point of view. This is me taking off my Chronicle Chamber hat and putting on my. Hang on. Have I got a hat handy?
We need a Chronicle Chamber hat.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, we totally need a Chronicle Chamber hat. That's got to be our next piece of merch.
All right. I've got my
that way on the YouTube, you'll be able to
hat on.
I want to see on the podcast you actually take off your Chronicle Chamber hat.
As a collector, I'm totally disappointed. They want to charge us $100 to 80 to $150 to $200, which is all well and good, but for what they have proposed to give us, it's not worth the money. I don't think. I like the idea of the Phantom history, and we do that ourselves on our Facebook and stuff like that, and we have offered to help them with some of the information that we have. But one double page for 1 decade is not enough. It's not enough.
Oh, no, that wasn't my idea.
So it has potential, but so far, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion as just a collector, they are far than impressing this collector to be able to spend my money on something like that. For the similar type of money, you can get a free hardcover book signed by all the artists for that 70th free year. That I would rather spend my money on that than this proposed book that Malin has produced. That's my take, and that's my hat off.
Well, look, in there, we're not the ABC, but I'm going to try and provide a balanced viewpoint here and come at it from the other angle. I'm actually really impressed with Malin in the sense that they're the first company, and they've done it 3-4 months ago, who are thinking about the 85th anniversary and are starting to, at least publicly, and maybe other companies have got stuff brewing along behind the scenes we're not privy to. It's possible. Not everyone tells us everything. But publicly, Malin for about 4 months now have been saying, this is something we'd like to do. Here's some ideas, and they put it together. They've never come out and said, well, this is exactly what it's going to look like. This is a proposed idea. I hear what you're saying. If it was just a double-page spread per decade, that would be disappointing.
I thought they did say that.
No, they haven't said that.
Okay. Oh, well, I stand corrected. Happy to be corrected on that, but I thought they did say that it was going to be a double page per decade.
No, that's been proposed art only, and even if you look down the left-hand side of that proposed art, the dates, it's a bit lorem ipsum. They've got 3 dates, and then they repeat those 3 dates and repeat those 3 dates. So it's really just a layout of a page as much as anything is what they're showing us. So I'm looking forward to seeing more. I'm hopeful that we, whether it's us as Chronicle Chamber, whatever it is, that can work with Malin to provide those dates that make it a bit more Phantom and that sort of thing, which I've said before many times. I'd love to see in my Phantom diaries and calendars, to have all those Phantom dates on it. So anyway, we'll wait and see what they end up producing. But at this stage, at least they're thinking about it.
Fair enough. All right, I guess we'll move on then.
Okay, all right.
We got Stephen, who's sitting on the fence, and you and I on opposite sides.
There's a shock.
It's like nothing's changed.
Exactly.
I'm thinking if they want me to spend $150, it want to be bloody good.
Yeah, and at the moment it's
that
not.
is fair. That is fair. That is fair.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, let me put my hat back on. And at the moment it's not. There we go.
Very good. All right. The next thing we need to talk about is just need to mention it because it has happened, is that Frew have dropped the number of regular issues they are going to produce every year. For a while now, they've been producing, correct me if I'm wrong, 28 regular issues per year, which has been always, I thought, an odd number because it's a little bit more than one a fortnight. Not much. So would make the publishing schedule a bit difficult. And then the last 3 or 4 years, 3 years, they've added all these extras: Kid Fandom, Phantom's World, and Giant Size. Well, in 2020, I was about to say announced it. That's not fair. They didn't announce, but they sort of let subscribers know through their letters that they were going to move from 28 issues per year of the regular back to 26, which is that one per fortnight.
Yes.
Thoughts on the new publishing schedule, guys?
Well, it makes it regular, so all of a sudden you know it's going to be every fortnight rather than sometimes it's going to be a fortnight, sometimes it's going to be a week. So those people who like to just go to be regular, I suppose, like every fortnight, that's fine. I didn't. You'd like to have more Phantom, of course, but they're not getting rid of everything. They've still got Giant Size, even though I think Phantom's World and Kid Fandom might be going away, but Giant Size seems to be doing all right. Am I reading that one right?
Correct. Yep.
So, and then, look, I'm not published, or I guess, we've published off the Bushfire appeal, but that's a one-off. We're not in the publishing game, for our livelihoods. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of costs that's involved with the comic. And if the readers aren't, if people can't afford the comic every week or 30, it used to be 30 something, then 28, whatever, plus all these extras, then bring it back down. They've had to raise the costs recently, which we've spoken about, and so I don't know. I don't think we're going to be out of pocket too much. I think we're still getting we're getting a top quality production, and and we can. What is it? It's 28 turn to 26. I think we can manage that.
Yep. All right. Cool.
Well,
hang on. From a Phantoms fan point of view, I'll put my hat back on. It's always disappointing when you hear there's going to be less comics. That's something that you hear, and straight away you go, oh, what's going on? There's trouble, there's issues, there's blah 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 blah. And so when I first saw, and we were made aware of this by some Phantom fans who received their subscriptions. So when I saw it, and I guess when we talked about it, we thought, oh, hang on, what's to go with this? But not from a Phantoms fan point of view, and actually from a Chronicle Chamber point of view, who, we've talked to through about this, and they've provided some wonderful insight, like the fact that they've actually had people saying to them, you're producing too much, we can't afford it. They have told us that if they produce 2 less comics, it's likely going to be more graphic novels and trade paperbacks and stuff like that, which is actually going to go into the comic book shops and bookshops and stuff like that, which enables Frew to be able to, and also digital as well, because people are more likely to buy a bigger digital book than a single issue. So if that enables them to be able to make more money, you can't be upset with that, and it probably makes good business sense. And through the one thing I will give them credit for, and we've discussed this with Fans World and Kid Phantom, is that they're not afraid of making a hard call. Like they've cancelled Kid Phantom, Phantom's World, the Kiwi covers. And, you know, so if something's not working or it needs tweaking, they do it. And you cannot fault them. That is good business sense. And let's face it, they do have to make money. Otherwise, if they're not making money, we're all going to have to learn how to read Swedish.
Well, absolutely. And look, a double segue there. This news came out a month ago, and today, as we stand, if we still get 26 comics this year, I think we've done all right, because no one could fault them really if things go wrong in the supply chain and we get less than 26 comics under the current climate.
The comics, we're getting more comics than what we were with under Jim Shepard. Like, I looked at it, I think it was 1991, I believe, is when we started getting 31. And I believe it was 89 or 90, I'm going to have to go back, but from memory, we actually got 32 issues. And before then, it was less issues. But we're getting better issues, more issues than that. Even, we get an extra 4 through giant size, which we'll review the latest one if we actually ever get there. And then we're getting trade paperbacks and graphic novels and stuff like that. And they're brilliant.
Yeah, and by giving us less comics, actually giving us more Phantom.
Exactly.
Yeah. Work that one out. That's great.
All right. Well, it is what it is. It'll be what it'll be. And if we have to learn Swedish, as Jermaine says, well, at least it's the 70th anniversary of Fantomen this year. And they are celebrating that throughout the year, or certainly that was the plans. We're going to now cut to Mikael Lyck, who we have thrown to already. And he's going to come back now and tell us a little bit about his thoughts on Fantomen's 70th year so far. So take it away, Mikael.
So, after a quarter of the issues of this 70th year anniversary, I might give you my thoughts about it. If I have understood all the information correctly, the double issues are the only ones including newly produced stories. And with the issue 2-3 having the newspaper story Reckoning of the Nomad, that means there will be at max total of 6 new Team Fantomen stories over the whole year, and the rest will be reprints. I would have loved some more newly created content. Last year was great, with no reprints whatsoever. But maybe that cost too much, I'm not sure, but this year is not as great. Which is a shame, since it is the 70th year anniversary. But even though I complain about the reprints a lot, I like that we get to see the previously only black and white stories in color. And there's a lot of Phantom content in the comic books, with not that many side comics. But in the end, if a new comic book reader starts with issue number 1, since he saw the anniversary and everything, you might get the idea that the Wilhelmsson story is the stories that we print every day and every year. And that's not a great first impression in my book. That's my thoughts about it, at least.
Thanks for that, Mikael. And now, why don't you tell us a little bit about the latest Fantomen comics to come out, number 5 and number 6?
Let's review these Fantomen comics. So today we're going to go through number 5 and 6, 7 of 2020. Let's start with number 5. It has a cover from Henrik Sahlström. And I realize now that both this and the cover from the last issue is a homage or remake of the Go cover that was on the comic where the Bertil Wilhelmsson stories were published the first time. So this first story is The Mysterious Passenger, a remake of a Falk McCoy story with the same name. The information stated in this comic book wrongly credits Tony DePaul though, but that's just an error. I like it for the art in this one. It features a few images that have been used multiple times in Fantomen for promotional purposes, and the story is quite fun. Then there is another Falk and Barry Sunday story, again in black and white. I don't have to talk about that once again. This is The Treasure of the Skull Cave. It's a really good story, but I like it more in color, and I've read it so many times. Issue 6-7 of 2020. Action-filled, beautiful cover by Luca Arbata. And what's more, the first newly produced Team Fantomen story of the year. It's called in Swedish Den hemliga teatern del 1, Mannen med silvernäsan. That translates directly to The Secret Theater Part 1, The Man with the Silver Nose. This is a sequel to the Royal Murder Plot stories that was published in Through 1161 back in 97. And it's written by Claes Remerti and art by Kari Leppinen. It takes place in England following the second Phantom, and don't want to give away too much of the stories, but the Queen of England is there, and some characters that the second Phantom has met before, maybe even someone that's going to be related to him. And I noticed 2 times in this story that the speech bubble seemed to point towards the wrong character. Let's see if I can find this on the fly. Maybe not, but hopefully that's fixed when you get it in Australia, or if it gets reprinted somewhere else. And then about the story, it's decent, but I talked about this earlier. I'm a bit biased against these kind of history stories because it's an actual event, and it sometimes feel like Phantom is forced to be part of it a bit on the side. But all in all, it's great to read something other than reprints, that's for sure. Then there's 2 Falk and Barry stories, The Reef and The Masked Ball, both dailies and reprinted in black and white. So better than when they do the Sundays in black and white. Both are classic and great stories. I think most who listen to this podcast already read them a few times, but yeah, great stories. Not much more to say to that. And in the back, there's some information about issue number 8, another Wilhelmsson story, but written by Janne Lundström, and another Falk Barry reprint. Happy Phantoming!
All right. Thank you very much, Mikael. And we so appreciate, again, as we say every podcast, we so appreciate someone from Sweden being able to review the Swedish comics for us. And we'll talk a little bit more about other opportunities for other listeners as we get to the end of our review segment. So we are now into the reviews of the comics news. No, hang on. What do we do? News and reviews? News and comics. Comics and news. We're into the comics section of the comics and news. I'm all over the shop. So we're back into Australia now, and through in the last since last time we recorded, have only released the 2. We're saving Inked in Blood so that we can review that as a whole story, and I think people will understand that. So we're going to start with the first of our 2 regular issues that we're going to review, and that is issue 1860, The City of Horror, which has got this fantastic cover by Antonio Lemos, and you can see that if you're looking at our YouTube. And that's the story that, of course, is written by, it's the 1976 story by Bertil Willemsen and Orzak Erlap. So it's another one of those early ones that I guess Robert Amann might refer to in his book, but we're seeing only for the first time now, 45, 46 years down the track, in English in an Australian publication. So I'll throw over to you guys. What are your thoughts on through 1860 City of Horror?
The front cover, the Phantom, he's holding his hands in a certain strange way. Is there anything you could shed some light on there?
Yeah, let's go straight to that.
Yeah, why not?
Let's go straight to that one. Okay, page 6. It's good to see you reading the notes there, Stephen.
Sorry, of course. Was it supposed to come later, was it?
No, it's all right. Page 6, if you're seeing it on YouTube, you'll see the panel of the Phantom holding a spear when the tiger is attacking him. He's holding his spear. You look at the cover, and there's no spear, even though he is looking like he's holding a spear. So we are led to believe that this cover has been censored. So I don't. To be honest, I didn't notice it too much at the start. So, but when you look at the cover a little bit more detail, it's glaring notice. But I guess when I first saw it, when I first picked it up and started reading it, I didn't catch it. But when I looked at it a little bit more detail, it's a little bit noticeable. So I don't know. Interesting about that.
Yeah, so our understanding is that that cover image may well have had the spear in the Phantom's hands to begin with, and then at King Features' end, they said that probably wasn't appropriate, and so the spear has come out. At first glance,
not appropriate. He's got a tiger just about to rip his head off, and he's there with closed fists. He's going to punch him and it's just going to run away.
If you use your imagination as you look at that picture, his left hand is coming up under the tiger's chest to lift it up out of the air, and his right hand is cocked and poised, ready to uppercut it. And so we're going to have a tiger unconscious in a moment with a skull fist on his jaw. And what's more Phantom than that? Honestly.
and it's and needless to say, the Phantom's going to easily beat the tiger. He's got the strength of 10 tigers, so one tiger.
10 tigers, exactly.
One tiger's not going to pose him much threat. But anyway, what about the story?
I enjoyed the story. It's definitely a story of its era where, and it's a 35. Is it a 33 or a 35 page?
Story 30. Yeah, 34.
And so it takes longer because it's more pages than what the modern day stories. There's more panels, but I enjoy it. It's a different type of story where in some sense, the Phantom kind of takes a bit of a backward step in a lot of ways. But yeah, I enjoy the story. It's probably not going to be one that I will probably rush out to read a million times or, maybe even 10 times. But I enjoyed it. John Bull, a.k.a. Norman Walker, is one of my more favourite writers. So it's, I enjoyed it to be able to read some more of his stories as well.
And there's a bit of a... alluding to the Gurk twins, I think I'm getting that right. Going into the bar and roughing the joint up, and then the Phantom just having none of it and sorting them out. But a bit of a twist when the lawyer gets involved, of course. Bloody crafty lawyers.
A bit of wharf rats as well, with people roughing up the places and stuff like that as well, and protection.
I thought the whole thing was a bit, if I can coin the phrase, I thought it was all a bit forkish, the whole thing. And you guys have named a couple of stories. The Reporters was the one that sprung to mind for me, because we've got Harry and Kathy as these two really enthusiastic journos in this case who are going off on a story, going places where they've got no experience or ability to be able to navigate, but the Phantom saves them and that sort of stuff. So.
In the whole bad guys as well, which is a McCoy element.
Yeah, so the whole structure of the story, even from the bit where it's a little bit of he's in the jungle and meanwhile in the city this is going on. So the structure of the story and the characterization of the various players in the game, I suppose, was very Lee Falk for me. So from 1976 in Sweden, it's interesting to see how close they were still sticking to Lee Falk's basic ideas and premises.
Jermaine liked that comment. You could tell by the look on his face.
Any excuse for him to try and throw the little barb.
I enjoyed the story, but much like Jermaine's, I don't think it's going to be on my most read list, but it was an enjoyable story.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got it in English. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
good
yeah.
to get these stories in English. I think it would be disappointing if we never got to read this story.
Yeah, and I thought there was some really cool little artistic efforts by the crew, Williamson and all that. The reverse silhouettes that we saw, and I'll just hold them up. So on page 13, I've noted, and again on page 17. So that's an example right there of, I guess, what I'm calling a reverse silhouette. And also just the shadow on the Phantom's face on page 21, 23. There's some cool little images in here that could make good stickers or posters or whatever in their own right. So, no, I quite enjoyed the book.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, let's move on then to issue 1861, and this is an exciting story, or one that I think lots of us were looking forward to in terms of its arrival in Australia and its publication by Frew, because this is the Golden Eagle story that very famously had the Phantom beating up a bad guy with the rainbow flag in the Fantomen cover by Henrik Salstrom. And I'm sure Jermaine will hold that up in a moment. I don't have a copy of it. But this is the Golden Eagle as it appeared in Australia. And again, it has the Phantom. In this case, we've got the cover by Luca Alberta, who again contributed to the Bushfire Book. And this is his second cover for Frew after the ape one last year. I forget the name of the story, but sorry,
Pit of
Doom. Very good, well done. So Golden Eagle by Luca Alberta, the cover, and again it's got the Phantom advancing with the rainbow flag, and it was timed in Australia by Frew to be published a couple of days before the Sydney Mardi Gras Gay Pride celebration in Australia. So well timed by Frew, and there's the cover. So guys, I'd be really interested in a bit of your feedback as to what you thought of issue 1861, the Golden Eagle.
I liked it. It was a fun story. It was a fast-paced story. It had a lot of Phantom elements that we're used to. A lot of nods to past stories, like with Carpathia, that chick, which I can't remember the story that she was in, and I know it was in the story somewhere. Dirty Business 1678. She's down there. It talks about, but I can't remember her. But it makes me want to actually go pick up that story to go read it. It's a fun story. You know, always liked Alex Saviak's work. His work works well in black and white as well as color, and there's a bit of fun. Like, for instance, I like at the end when the girl goes, you know, that you find any reason to kiss me, and the Phantom's like, oh no, and you know, so there's a little bit of fun involved, and I enjoyed it.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who couldn't remember the female character, but I thought, oh, what have I? Because I'm prone to forget characters if but yeah, it's nice to know that the fellow with the encyclopedic knowledge couldn't remember her either. But yeah, she seems like a character who may be springing up a bit more often, which, well, she's seems to have a very good backstory and is interesting to help a Phantom adventure along. Yeah, like you said, the bit of fun there at the end with the doing CPR, but any excuse for a kiss, that type of thing. And you know my thoughts on Alex Saviak. You know my thoughts on Alex's art. I think he's, if not the best, he's definitely in the top 2 or 3. That's for sure. When it comes to Phantom artists, the scene that everyone's talking about, or that got the big publicity, especially overseas, with the Gay Pride March and the neo-Nazis, for lack of a better word for them, extreme right wing, worked in the story. It wasn't like it was just shoehorned in. It was very much a part of the story and flowed well, and which the whole story did, of course. But I don't recall, apart from us talking about it really getting any much media airplay like it did overseas. Would that be
No,
right?
Yeah.
But then again, we've had bushfires, and then we've had COVID-19, and then who knows what else has been going on to distract people from this. But maybe is it such a head turner nowadays that, or here in Australia as it would have been over in Scandinavia? I don't know. I thought they're reasonably liberal over there, but I don't know.
I think now in Sweden it didn't get a lot of negative press, but it was more in Poland, which was in the original Swedish version. I don't actually have my copy with me, but in the original Swedish version, it was Poland, which was the country where the Pride Festival was being taken place. And then I remember, if you listen to our podcast, Mikaels, we talked extensively about this story. And he said that if he had to have a regret, it was that he didn't change the story from Poland to a non-real country like Carpathia.
I reckon he actually named Carpathia in the podcast.
And so I reckon that's probably one of the reasons why it doesn't get as much attention. Plus, it was probably a slow news week over there. We've had a lot of stuff over here that's been getting a lot of attention lately. But I think that changing the country from Poland to Carpathia was a smart move.
I agree. I think that that took the heat out of it in terms of being accusatory at another country, which certainly the right wing of Poland certainly felt that it was attacking them. So it's interesting. I feel like I'm going to disagree. I don't want to come out and be the disagreeable guy, but I was just so disappointed with this story. I honestly was. And I took into it. Peter Anderson had said on social media, "Hey, don't get your hopes up with the story. It's not as good as you might hope for." And I was hoping for a good story. I was hoping for a story that matched the cover. And while I'll put it out there right now, I think on balance that Sahlstrom's cover was more dynamic and more engaging. This is the fruit cover. I think the pastel cover, the pastel colours dilute, and the fact that the red of the flag is into the red fandom, and it just all seems, even the purple is down with the purple outfit of the flag. I just think that the whole thing is a bit diluted. And that said, I think that as a double spread, and if this was ever made into a poster, I'd certainly be keen on it. But I just think the vibrancy of the rainbow was lost. So that's a criticism. And then the story, everything that you said about it, Jermaine, I probably disagree with. To be honest, I didn't think that it was a very. I know, but I didn't think it was a very good fandom story at all. I thought that if you, and here's what I thought: if this was the first Phantom comic you ever read, what message would you take away about the Phantom? And to be honest, you wouldn't know anything about the character, because the fact that he's from the jungle was mentioned once on page 15 in I'll go back to the jungle with your monkeys. So other than that, you've got no idea of the heritage of the character. He's getting, and he doesn't involve himself in the love interest who tries to throw herself at him like a Marshall sister, and that's fine. But he doesn't say at any stage or even think, "Oh, Diana, I'm married," or "I've got a girlfriend," or anything. So that's not part of it. I thought there was heaps of just convenient moments in the plot that let them go from page to page and let's keep the story moving, even though this actually makes no sense that this might happen. I was really disappointed by the story, and I apologise to Philip Madden, who's the author. But if you're going to listen to reviews, you've got to hear negative criticism, I suppose. I liked the artwork, but I just thought I thought the story was.
Do you think it's purely because you've been waiting for this story for the last year and a half, 2 years, and there's been so much hype and stuff like that, so in a sense, has made the story more than what it was actually originally intended to be, which was a story and not a political statement.
Yeah, quite possibly, but it sort of in one way represents why I don't like Swedish or Team Fantomen stories as a whole. I thought it was the dialogue. There's so much dialogue. Like, you could halve the dialogue and still have a readable story. It's just so over the top with the narration and the amount of words you've got to read to try and understand the story. And I guess if I put, I've done a lot of editing of creative stories lately too, so I've probably got that hat on as well as we come towards the end of term. And I'm going, oh God, you could take half this dialogue out and have an effective story that was easier to read too.
Yeah.
You're changing my mood now, Dan. I'm leaning towards your side. You put forward a strong argument.
But there's a lot of heavy text on like page 12, 13. So just for the YouTube viewers, they can see that. But then you've got the action pages, like 16, 17. You wouldn't say that's heavy in copy.
No, I just felt like there was about 5, 6 action scenes that the artist had that the author had in mind, and he leapt between them, and there was some really flimsy connections between this bit of action and the next bit of action. Like, okay, the Phantom takes down a motorcycle rider so that he can ride away from the Gay Pride Parade and down to the river to chase the bad guys. He kicks the motorcycle rider off his bike so he can steal the bike. Is the motorcycle rider a bad guy? We don't know. The Phantom doesn't know. He just steals a bike. To me, that sort of thing is not Phantom. That's
Yeah, but the Phantom's been borrowing stuff like that in many stories. So like if it was in
he kicks the bloke off his bike and knocks him to the ground.
I'll give you the bit about the kicking bit, but the bit about stealing a bike or borrowing a bike or whatever, that's been and borrowing stuff that doesn't belong to him.
Yeah, there's the difference between borrowing and stealing or whatever.
Well, not really. That's been used in a lot of folk stories as well. So I could think of several at the top of my head. Where he
and that's kind of my point. So. It's close to, it's trying to pay homage to the original Phantom, but just misses a little bit. Like, there's opportunities, and there is a line in here about I can't remember now what it was, but one of the characters says something about that. I thought, if that was Asterix and down at the bottom said "Old Jungle Saying," so it's close. It's really close.
Yeah. I wonder if that's more of a. I wonder if like adding in jungle sayings and stuff like that could be more of a through or an editorial thing rather than a actual writer type.
Yeah, if you're trying to write a Phantom story, you should include an old jungle saying. That's
I agree with that, and I take your point. But what I'm saying is that an editor, and you would know this, an editor, and we've talked with many writers, and they tell us about like they look at the story that they've written, submitted, and then the story that they get. And there's always editorial. That criticism, which you've said, is probably just as directed towards the editors as it is probably the writers, because the editor's job should be making the story more of a Phantom story, I guess, using your terminology.
Absolutely.
Adding a jungle saying, after he gets kissed by Camilla, it says, the Phantom says, "Camilla, stop," and then maybe a quick sentence could have been, "Camilla, stop, I'm married," blah, blah, blah.
Exactly
blah, blah.
right. Yeah, no, so, you're right. I'm not entirely directing this at Philip Martin. Yeah. You're right. The editors, it's a package. And I guess Philip's the one who's got his name on the writing credits. But you're absolutely right. It's the final package that I'm having a look at.
Yeah. And I think that's, no. Look at that.
Yeah, it's bloody good.
Disagreed, and then we agreed at the end. let's move
Right
on
at the
before
end.
we choose something else to disagree on.
And the art is great, as you say. Do we want to? I'm not interested. You might be interested. Do you want to have a talk about Heart of Darkness, Part 6, Chapter 6, or whatever we're up to?
No. Let's move on.
Okay, good. We agree on another thing.
It's already quite long, and
Okay.
I want to get my Phantom's hat out again.
All right. So we move on then to Phantom's World number 11, which is this one here. The Felmang cover with a demon or a vampire or whatever it is on the front there with the Phantom, and
his name's Magoo. Is it Magoo? Well, no, it's not Magoo.
Yeah,
What's his
you're
name? Yeah,
you're
Magoo.
right. It is a cover directly related to the story, which is the Haunted Castle, which is Felmang's take on this 21st Sunday that was produced, which was Ray Moore's last Sunday, it should be said, and it would seem that Ray Moore probably only drew the first maybe page or two of the original Sunday there before Wilson McCoy was taking over. The very next Sunday after the Haunted Castle, the 22nd story, was accredited to Wilson McCoy. So this was the one that Ray took over, and Ray stopped and Wilson McCoy took over. But it's been redone by by Felmang in Phantom's World number 11, as well as having another couple of stories at the end.
Sorry.
And if you've been able to follow all that, you're doing better than I am.
I think we will do a post or a social media post or an article looking at the two versions between when Ray Moore and Wilson McCoy took over Ray Moore, because it's interesting looking at the little differences which you can tell. So yeah, watch this space. We will discuss that in a later path. But yeah, I enjoyed this fan as well. It's the last one we're going to get, which I will admit I'm a little bit disappointed about, because I have enjoyed the concept, but I understand it not being popular and it not being to everyone's taste, because the story quality isn't always the best. So yeah, so I didn't mind it. I enjoyed this story. I've had this conversation. I can't remember if it was with you guys or with someone else on Facebook. Someone questioned the reasoning behind modernization of these old Lee Falk stories, and the way I think personally.
Well, whether it was with us or with other people, it's a valid question, because we've seen this story. It's been produced by Frew only 3 times, is my understanding, which is pretty remarkable for Frew to only have produced this story 3 times.
The original story.
The original story, exactly, by Moore and McCoy. And here we are seeing it again. What are your thoughts on the value of an old Lee Falk script being reinterpreted, not reproduced, it's important to say, because the dialogue of the story is different. It's been reinterpreted by Felmang in this case.
I've got my Phantom Collector's hat on. Now, when Felmang and Elf Granberg first started doing this, it was the early to mid 1990s, right? Now, I was a younger, impressionable, early new fan. Now, as I've gotten older, I've appreciated Wilson McCoy's work a lot more. I didn't always appreciate Wilson McCoy's work when compared to Cy Barry, Ray Moore, and then the European artwork. It's chalk and cheese. And so when I read those stories, I got a greater appreciation for those actual stories than when I did when I read the originals in the Wilson McCoy artwork. So I personally think, from a fan's point of view, someone who may not be reading those stories, if you were like me or for whatever reason, this type of stuff can give you a greater appreciation for some of Lee Falk's stories. especially the poorer drawn stories, like the 12, like Queen, no, not Queen Samurai. What's the other one? Mermaids of Merlot Straits. That was a really poorly drawn story, and then when Filmang redrew it, it brought a greater, fresher retake of it and makes you appreciate the story a lot more.
All right. Well, that's the idea in general. What do you think about The Haunted Castle as a remake?
I enjoyed it. I have one big criticism, which I'll get to in a second. But
let's hold off on your criticism. Let's hear, Steve, what did you think of The Haunted Castle as a remake?
You're not going to like this because I was waiting for you guys to. I was waiting to hear your reviews. And I was going to see if I was going to read it or not because Phantom of the World, like you said at the start, there, fellas, hasn't been everyone's taste. Some of the stories have been quite poor. Like I've bought it every time it's come out, but to say I've been rushing to read it would be a lie. And after Felmang's a fantastic artist, there's no denying that. I own some of the artwork. It's of his artwork. It's great, but his stories have not been as good as his artwork. And so when I saw that, I totally missed that it was a Lee Falk thing. All I saw was a Felmang story. I thought, oh shit, he's written another one. Let's see what you guys think first before I read it. And mainly because I'm time poor at the moment. After we've talked about it, you can let us know whether you're now going to read the issue or not. I've already decided. Well, once you've told me that it was based on Lee Falk, now I want to read it.
Okay.
Well,
I'll make the time a bit sooner rather than later.
Can I make a case for the negative then?
Go for it.
You didn't like it, mate.
I did not like it. I found it drawn out, and I found it I started doing a check against the original, and that really just bore into mind for me why this didn't work for me. It takes 5 pages of this story before you get to the end of the first page of The Haunted Castle in terms of the original Lee Falk story. Lee Falk's original Haunted Castle goes for 22 pages of a through issue, and this is back in issue 1393. It takes 48 pages. So 48 pages versus 22. So it's more than double. And
before you go on, is that because he's been able to do bigger panels and produce better artwork?
Yes.
No, it's not. It's he's added dialogue. The dialogue of Lee Falk.
So there's added dialogue, but there is bigger panel stuff.
There's no replicated dialogue at all. He's gone, okay, here's the story. I'm going to rewrite it. And the dialogue is different. There's not a word. Oh, well, there's probably words. There's not a sentence that is repeated from the original into the new. So I just think that Falk, one of Falk's why he's a genius was that he was able to tell a story succinctly and quickly and in an exciting manner. And I don't want to have a go at Felmang, but I think the writing was overdone in this, and he drew it out more than needed to be.
So the plot is the same, and a lot of the elements are the same, but you're right, he has drawn out parts more. But I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, but I will take your point that there was some parts that were maybe a little bit longer than what it probably needed, but I didn't think it was too drawn out. And that's reading it from a Phantom's wearing a Phantom hat, a Phantom's point of view, Phantom reader, who does enjoy a good story and stuff like that. And
well, to be fair, you don't have that only hat, mate. There are lots of us who are Phantom fans who enjoy a good story, and this is. And I'm just saying, I would have liked it to be quicker.
Yeah, but I think sometimes it can be good, it can be bad. I think a lot of it depends on on outside circumstances, whether you're time poor or whether you can actually take a good hour to read a comic and stuff like that, whether you might enjoy it as well. So there's different circumstances in that. I had a good half hour to an hour to read this, so I did enjoy it more because I was, able to use that time. But that's that.
I would say in
prefer-
rebuttal to that, when I read this issue, the fact that it's got a sticker on there, that's because I bought it. Oh, there's a sticker over here. It's because I bought it as I was about to go on a 2-hour train trip, and this was all I had to do, and I didn't enjoy it at the end of that. It's only tonight that I've gone back and checked it against the other book and seen the page difference. So, look, it wasn't as exciting because it is exactly the same plot, but it takes twice as long. It's like taking a half-hour sitcom and trying to get a 1.5-hour telly movie out of it. It didn't work.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And some people enjoy it and some people don't. Do you enjoy, what about the concept though? You haven't really answered that question. Do you like the concept of certain stories being redrawn?
I don't mind the idea of it if it's done well, but I wouldn't say I've seen it done well.
What about the Samaras one and the Mermaids of Mellow Straits and some of the ones that Elf Granberg and Felmang did in the 90s? Because they're the ones that most people refer to.
Won't shock you to hear that the first time I saw it was in the newspaper or the newspaper version, and that remains my favourite.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. So the first time I saw it was the remake, and I prefer the remakes than the original. What about you, Stephen? Did you enjoy those original remakes, and do you like the concept of that?
I like the concept, and for the reason that you said earlier about not being a total fan of the Wilson McCoy art when you're younger. I remember a conversation with my brother, he's a bit of a part-time artist, and he thought that the Wilson McCoy art was quite simplistic and what have you, whereas the updated was more dynamic, more vibrant. But that was, as kids, 25 years ago or even longer now. I've got to come to the acceptance that I'm getting old. This damn virus has postponed my birthday party. Bloody virus, I tell you.
If only it stopped you getting actually older as well.
Yeah. But as a concept, I don't mind. I like the concept. I think it's a good concept to get people in. And it's not a new concept. But there's plenty of things that get a redo, and people might I'm thinking about TV shows and movies, and they see the redo, then I wonder what the original was like, and they'll have their preference. They'll have their preference. They can appreciate both, but they had their preference either for the remake or for the original. And being the fan that we are now, you do appreciate the Wilson McCoy art, but as a 12, 13-year-old kid, it was probably the Felmang art that got us in the first place.
And it probably helped that he knew how to draw a pretty lady.
Well, that does raise the question, because there's some pretty obvious additions really throughout the entire art, whether it's on the cover or throughout. I have no inkling at all, or no hesitation in suggesting, I guess, that Felmang did not initially draw Diana with a elbow length set of skins that also goes down to her knees, and
which is very practical in the jungle.
Well, it actually is. It may well be more practical. It's certainly what the Phantom wears, is this skin tight outfit. The Diana's got it from elbow to knees as basically a compression garment. I don't think for a moment that Felmang drew her like that in the first instance. Knowing Felmang's art as we all do, he probably was a little bit more risque than that. Thoughts, guys?
I wouldn't think.
I'll just hold it up here. There's a really good example on page 23 of what that looks like with Diana in the undergarment or the compression garment that I'm suggesting, and what her dress probably was like in the first instance from filming.
Yep, that. Now, I can confirm that it has been censored. If you look at my screen now, if you're on YouTube, you'll actually see a panel where whoever did the censoring actually missed Diana. And so you can actually see Diana in the final production of what the dress length and stuff like
What page is that if we're not on
actually
YouTube?
did like. That page is, crikey, now I've got to find it. It is page 41. So it's the second or the third panel. You can actually see Diana in her, and it is fair to say that that in the original, Wilson McCoy did draw Diana in a very similar style outfit.
Yes.
We can confirm that that this story has been censored from the front cover onwards.
Well, censored, we could get into another debate.
Okay, yeah, hang on, we'll quickly discuss that. Now we can also confirm that if you're a Patreon at a $5 level, if you access the Phantom Preservation, watch the next update on that, because you'll be able to see what it originally looked like. Now, I guess the question that I have for everyone is this a censor or an edit? Now, I personally think it's a censor because it was drawn, and then from what we understand and what we can gather, reading between the lines, he was then asked to change and make Diana more modest. And so, in my opinion, that is a censor. Stephen, where would you classify it, as an edit or as a censor?
It sounds like a very conservative editor.
So would you classify it as a censorship or more of an edit?
An edit, a conservative edit rather than a censor. It's not like she's covering up, anything that shouldn't already be covered up. But
there is one or two panels where you see, it could be debatable whether you see anything. Like, for instance, on page 6, you see Diana riding on the horse. That's probably the one, and looking at what we see in front of us and looking at that could be the one type of panel where in my opinion, it could be an issue. But apart from that, I couldn't see, and I read it once, spotted it straight away, and then I've gone back and looked at every panel, and that's probably the one panel that it could be argued that the dress didn't need to blow up that much. But in every other panel, I personally, and I've always been very I'm on a high horse about this. I've got daughters and stuff like that. But apart from that one panel, I couldn't really see anything else that was too risque in a sense.
Is there someone new at King Features, or someone, if we're getting rid of spears on front covers and putting jumps on Diana, who's never really been that type of person, but her character isn't that, well, she's a nice person, but being overly conservative where she's going to be wearing a bodysuit underneath her short dress doesn't shout to me Diana Palmer Walker.
It's a good question about whether there is someone new there or not. We don't know. But before we get onto that, we do need to let Dan at least answer that question. So Dan, where do you sit? Is it a censor or an edit, and quickly why?
Oh, no, it's 100% an editorial decision by King Features. It's not a censor because from my point of view, or my understanding of the definition of the word censorship, is that it's government imposed or it's coming from an external body, whereas this is King Features who are deciding how the Phantom and the Phantom universe should be represented, and that's entirely their right because the Phantom is their intellectual property. You've raised page 6. I'd also go to page 13, for instance. I think there's about 3 panels on there where where Diana's top is a bit if there was no undergarment there, it would be far too low cut to be satisfactory, I guess, for a family panel, for a
Spoken like
family comic.
a true father of two teenage daughters.
Well, look, you've already claimed that
Yeah.
being a father of girls makes a difference. To be honest, to me, it's more about the boy, because I've got a boy as well, and I don't want him to start objectifying women based on the back of a Phantom comic. And again, and I guess this comes back to what I was saying earlier about the length of the story. This is more than double, and we all know that Phil Mang loves drawing beautiful women, and I think he's used the extra panels to try and get some more Diana content. As I said, it takes 5 pages for him to get to the 5th panel in the Sunday story, and it's all Diana content, and your page 6 is entirely within that space. So, yeah.
Yeah,
It's an editorial decision because King Features owns it, and they get to decide how the universe is portrayed. So it's a no-brainer for me.
If he'd drawn some type of different dress, would we have seen the knee length bodysuit with the arm and the
If
elbow?
it was a longer dress, or a maybe she'd worn a safari suit for a 2020 or 2019 version of this 1948 story or wherever it's from.
okay. So
Because I hear what you're saying about the original costume. Yes, the original costume in 1948 was very revealing.
If they were to reprint that story, would they demand and ask a skivvy or an undergarments to be added to it? Or has it just been added because it's filming?
No, it's been added because the original dress was inadequate. And so that was...
But no, I'm talking about...
That was the easiest way of redoing the art.
No, that's not what I'm asking. If they were to reprint the original story done by Wilson McCoy, would they ask the edit/censor to be added to it?
No, because when was the last... I've had a look through that story today, and while it's a short skirt and...
It's shorter than the one that Filming.
It doesn't show as much as what Filming would have, though. There's no page 6, if you like.
So I personally think, I agree with you that they would not ask that to be re-added. And I personally believe, and this is as a fan, I personally think that they have objectified Filming a little bit. And if it was anyone else, maybe it wouldn't be as risque or whatever. But I reckon he's been picked on a little bit here.
Well, it's impossible to know whether they've looked at it more closely because it's Filming, or they've just looked at it closely and gone, no, that's not good enough, no matter who the artist is.
Yeah, and that's what I reckon it is. I reckon. So did you read the other parts of the story? The other stories?
The other 2 stories? Yeah, of course.
What do you think of those?
Yeah, they were good. I enjoyed them. I liked them as fillers at the back of a regular content of a regular story, for sure.
So what about as fillers of, so say for instance when Phantom Heart of Darkness ends, would you be okay to see a couple of these type of stories thrown at the end, whether it's...
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's where they belong.
Into 2 or whatever. So you'd be happy to see that type of stuff?
Split into 2, I'm not sure. I guess if that was the only way they could do it, because these are about 20 pages each, and if you wanted to produce them as a 2-part 10-page each, yeah, that'd be okay.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I probably enjoyed the second story the best, because there was a lot of I like how the Phantom kind of messed with the bad guys a little bit. Like while they were going over here, they went behind him and knocked him out, and picked off one at a time, and stuff like that. There was the mountain princes that were upset and at the Phantom and stuff like that. So there was there was some cool stuff. I thought it was kind of tricky on page 82. They're shooting low to get to the Phantom, and the Phantom's already outsmarted him and is hiding high and stuff like that. So I enjoyed these stories. I would go as far as saying this would be one of the better Phantom's World, generally. It's probably not my most favourite Phantom's World. I can't remember which one that was, but there was one that really spoke to me that I really enjoyed. But this would be probably out of the 11, will probably be in the top 3 or 4 of the Phantom's World.
Maybe that's an interesting idea for a future podcast, a retrospective of Phantom's World issues 1 through 11, and a bit of a discussion about that as a concept and which were their favourites. So after Phantom's World 11, the next Fruit publication, and the last Fruit publication we had to talk about is Giant Size number 12, and that is this one here with the Glenn Lumsden cover. The first, I think, Giant Size cover that actually relates directly to the story as well. So we've got the Phantom there diving with the shadow, and that, of course, is a scene from Death Dive Part 1, which is the Glenn Lumsden written and illustrated story inside. I think we've got a shadow story, an older shadow story. Then we've got Death Dive. Then there's a new shadow story by Jeremy McPherson. Scorpius chapter 17 through to 20 whatever 4, and then some epilogues from Shane Foley to conclude the Scorpius scenes that have been happening in Giant Size. And then there's a Raven story as well, which I'm going to be upfront right now, and I didn't read because it's not Phantom. So Giant Size 12, big book, lots of stuff, 2 Phantom stories, both new content. Guys, what did you think?
Love it. One of maybe the best Giant Size ever. Can we talk about Scorpius? Because I get giddy and excited when I see it. So can we do Scorpius first?
Excellent. All right, what did you think of Scorpius?
Mate, how awesome is that? I'm reading it and it's just like, oh, look, there's such and such. There's such and such. There's Queen Samsara. There's that person from that Phantom Lee Falk story. And it's just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then it's like, there's panels. Like, for instance, where was that panel? This panel on page 58 where, which it was actually a free cover and it's taken off Cy Barry. So, Shane Foley has fun creating this, and this Phantom fan, hang on, where's my hat? This Phantom fan has fun reading it, and the whole time I'm going, trying to figure out all the clues, and this is how a Phantom crossover movie or whatever, if they ever look at, say, doing a Phantom movie and they want to cross it over with Flash Gordon or whatever, this is the type of plot it needs to be, because this is better and it gives the other characters like the Shadow, blah blah blah, and all that are given the right amount of limelight compared to something like from Marvel and stuff like that. That stuff is not as good as this story, in my opinion.
What about you, Steve?
Well, with Phantom's World, I've said before that I haven't made time to read it. Giant Size, I made time to read. Even so, even with the podcast coming up tonight, I made sure that this morning, before I went to work, I finished reading Scorpius. I'd only read up to about halfway. I started getting a little bit drowsy and fatigued. So I thought, no, I'm not appreciating the story as much as I could if I was awake. So this morning, before heading off to work, I finished off the Scorpius story. Like yourself, Dan, I haven't read the Raven story yet, but that's not because I don't want to. It's just haven't had a chance to yet, because I've been really enjoying those Raven stories. But the Giant Size has been a real surprise for me. I didn't think I'd be one for the stuff that's in it, especially after, I think it was the first issue, I think, that had the Catman story right at the start, and I hated it. I really did not like it. Catman is in Scorpius, and I still don't like him as much as the others.
But he's not as bad. He's not as useless.
No. That's right. He's a good character, but yeah, it was just a blatant rip-off in that first issue. But this whole issue, this whole Giants up to the Raven anyway, is very enjoyable. The Shadow, I like the Shadow stories. I like the old ones. And the new takes on the character by Jeremy McPherson, with part 3 of Firebreak, I think, from memory. I enjoyed it. But the main story and Glenn Lumpson's story with Death Dive, I thought was really well done as well. But the highlight of this is Shane Foley's Scorpius. The way that he has set the story out, they got the plot working extremely well. He's got all the characters interacting as they should be, like you said, all with the right limelight. He must have all pages and pages of notes, or posters all around the room, making sure they're all interconnected and doing all the right things there. And the short, snappy chapters really work well. It keeps the plot, it keeps the comic flowing really nicely. The witty dialogue or the snappy dialogue between adversaries when they're sparring on the roof, it's great. Like who am I talking about? Sir Falcon and Kane. He knows something's up, but he hasn't been able to quite pick it, and then gets completely surprised when Kane does what he does. It was quite, and I suppose I was unexpected of that as well. I thought he was looking for a secret trap door or some sort of booby trap, but then he takes the plunge. It's pretty huge. And the epilogues at the end, you alluded to before, Dan, really wrap up the story well, and not only wrap up the Scorpius story arc, but then allow for the next Shane Foley's next story. And I guess, for lack of a better word, we're going to call it the Betrayed, or the Betrayers. And we get Planet Man, who is been popped up in a few giant sizes. So at first I thought with the symbol. At first I saw the symbol and was kind of like from a distance. I thought, oh, is that like the old Defenders of the Earth symbol? Have they really done up Flash Gordon's uniform? But no, it wasn't Flash Gordon. Talking about Defenders, though, did anyone see another Lee Falk creation sitting outside a bar, talking to a certain hooded character?
On what page?
Oh, you've missed it. How could you have missed that? He's wearing a top hat and coat and cape. How the heck could you miss him?
What? Oh, yeah.
My goodness.
On page 64. Very good eyes. There you go. On page 64. Now, how good is that? And
the Mandrake there sitting having a chat to the Raven.
Yeah, next to the Raven. Yes. Very good eyes. But that's the beauty about this, is it's like you can keep reading it and reading it and reading it, and you can pick up new things. Like,
well, just before we go on, the way he's done in the panel below, the Mandrake panel, where he's got the shadow in costume, but the way he's kind of like ghosting the shadow just behind him, so you realise, oh, that's right, the shadow's in costume here, or he's in disguise as this drunk. So things like that are just great ways of depicting it.
Yeah. And even the words, like they're in those little panels without the images. So it's like there's a lot of text in that page, but he can, instead of having a panel and drawing a person with the speaking, it's just the panel with the words. And like, there's just things like, for instance, like when Falcon falls off and he gets wet and he goes, even lightweight armor is not good falling into water, or when he knocks out Kane and says, "You talk too much," and and it was really enjoyable, and I loved the epilogues. Loved them. They made it. And it's like, we've all watched the Marvel movies where we, go through the credits and then we wait for the credits and stuff like that. It reminds me of that, and yeah, really enjoyed it. Hats off to Shane. Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Hats off to Shane Foley. He's done a great job. I'm left with two questions. Well, one big question. Who is the person on page 59 who's behind the Baroness? So the daughter of the Baroness, I guess it is, on page 59. We are introduced to the Baroness again, and then there's another shadowy figure behind the Baroness. And so the whole time I'm thinking, okay, who could it be? Who from the Phantom's past could it be? You know, and I think it will be too easy for it to be Queen Samasa, who is the bad person that were introduced on 74 and 75. I reckon it's someone else, and so I'm looking forward to that as well.
What about you, Dan? You've been quiet through the whole thing. What do you reckon of the issue, apart from the last Raven story, because you missed that one?
Yeah, no, I liked all of the things that you've said, and the page that Jermaine drew attention to here, which was the old fruit cover, which is a model of a Cybari. I love how Shane Foley even acknowledged in his signature there, and I'm not sure how much of it.
Oh, I missed that.
Down
Just lower it a bit there, mate.
Lower it a little bit.
That it's modelled off Cybari as well. So, you know, he signed it, but then said after Cybari as well. I really like that. All of the little touches that you said. Look, as a whole story, Scorpius, I thought, you know, it's a great story that a Phantom happens to be a part of, rather than it being a Phantom story per se. The epilogues really excite me in the same way that they have you, Jermaine, because I think they're drawing so many Phantom characters from the past. And one of the things we've always said is that the Phantom has a lot of really cool bad guys, but they come in for one story and then they disappear again. And what's being set up here is all of the, you know, what do we got here? Prince Orc, Raman, Sansamar, all of these very similar bad guys from a similar time period all come together. And that it makes sense. And so I'm really interested in the next story far more than I am in the story that we've just finished reading, which I guess is a cool thing for an epilogue to do as well. So there's that story. If I go back to the other Phantom story, which is
hang
Death
on,
Dive.
I got a quick question with Scorpius before we move back to Glenn Lumsden's story. Could these short parts that Shane Foley does, could they work in a regular Phantom comic as a preview of what Giant Size is, to try and get people who aren't buying Giant Size but reading the normal comics? Could that be used as like a cross-platform, a cross-promotional type of thing?
That's interesting. As someone who gets both by default, probably not.
But I'm talking about like actually, so stuff that we've not already seen in Giant Size, but let's just say the next part, whether it's Scorpius or whatever, whether it's the Cobra, you know, we see a Cobra in the last panel, whatever the next part is, could, and it's just a random thought, could it be used as a...
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, if there was a 2 or a 3 page chapter, and then there's lots of those size chapters in the Giant Size Scorpius, featured in a regular through, and it said find out the full story in the next Giant Size, and then the Giant Size included those 2 to 3 pages as well as continued with the story, you wouldn't want to have to go back and refer to each of them to get the whole story together. Yeah, no, yes, in theory it could. So, the Glenn Lumsden story, though, of the two, was my favourite. I really liked the Death Dive story. I thought that was a Phantom story that the Shadow happened to be a part of, and I guess that's that goes back to similar to what I was saying earlier about the other stories. The 1860, which one was it? Whatever. My point being that, is this a Phantom story? And if this was the first story that you read, the first comic you read of the Phantom, would you pick up enough about it? And the Death Dive story, that was a Phantom story with the Shadow in it. So I really enjoyed that. I'm really looking forward to the second part. That does Glenn Lumsden's art is spectacular, and I think that he, as much as anybody of the modern writers, has understands what Lee Falk was trying to do.
So, for those who don't know, this is actually the first actual story he has drawn since his mid-90s Marvel miniseries, which featured the 22nd Phantom. So he's done covers,
as opposed to
images,
covers and pin-ups, and
and stuff like that. Now, just a heads up for those who are wondering, yes, Glenn Lumsden will be on our podcast. He has asked for us to wait until the second part of Death Dives before he joins us as well, so we can talk about that story, as well as his Marvel story, which featured the 22nd Phantom. I liked the story as well. I loved the... I guess this is the beauty about through creating their own stories, is because they can create stories that works well in black and white. Sometimes when you get a Fantomen story and then it, you know, they draw it for color and then it comes to a black and white comic for a free comic, it doesn't always look as good. But I've noticed that with Jeff Weigel, when he used his shadowing work, and also with Glenn, not Glenn, in this story, he can use the shadow to make it work better as a black and white than, say, a colour story with the colours stripped out, if that kind of makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair enough. All right. We need to move on because it's getting later and later and later. So that's the end of the through. Next time we get in touch for comics and news, we will talk about Inked in Blood.
Can we just quickly make mention of Nyx?
Okay.
Who is Nyx?
Who is Nyx? So I'm not sure if this has kind of been lost or whatever, but Frew are actually creating a new character called Nyx, which is the daughter of the Shadow. So the Shadow seems to be a character that Frew enjoy. They've got the license, which means they can create this and they don't have to pay license fees, be under, etc., etc. So what I personally am interested that they have cancelled Phantom's World and Kid Phantom, and then they're bringing out a new character. Now, I think that's a fairly interesting choice. That and I understand it from a business point of view because there's no licensing fees and there's no having to take stuff to be approved by King Features, which we've discussed earlier in this podcast, that sometimes that can be problematic. But it's interesting that they are creating their own character. They're creating their own characters, and obviously, Giant Size is popular enough for them to be able to expand the Giant Size universe, I guess. But I do find it interesting from a pure Phantoms point of view that we are getting another character instead of the money being spent on Phantom's World or Kid Phantom.
All right. Well, I'll be quite blunt. You're saying you find it interesting, etc.
That's me being diplomatic.
No, and I'm being blunt as a Phantom fan, and I'll put my Phantom fan hat on now. As a Phantom fan, do you care that?
I need a Phantom hat.
Who, to me, I'm not interested in these other characters.
Yeah. My interest is secondary, maybe even on a third level. So I want Frew to be successful, but I'm not interested in these characters. Yeah, personally. Yeah, and the Giants. You raise a good point. The Giant Size target audience is not just Phantom fans; it's Australian comic fans, and there are a lot of Australian comic fans that enjoy Giant Size because it brings up all the legendary Australian artists and we had quite a good history. So if that's why they enjoy Giant Size, are they going to be at all interested in a new character? Well, I guess it depends. I guess I don't know. I know Stephen's in the future, so he might be able to answer that question a little bit better than me. That's stuck in the past, back in WA. But
we over here in the future are looking forward to this new character, Nyx, and seeing what's going to happen, especially being written by Andrew Constant, who did some fantastic work with Kid Phantom, who I am very sad to see go, because I thought that was quality production all around. I can't remember who the artist is off the top of my head. I'll just put the comment.
Ivan Rodriguez.
Brazilian.
Brazilian. Well, where would we know his work from?
Supergirl, and he did some other stuff for Dynamite, which I think was Red Sonja or Vampirella. So he knows how to draw.
So he's got some runs on the board, which is good. And yeah, Andrew Constant, which we know from Kid Phantom, and also he's got his DC work as well, doing the Demon. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Nyx. They put it forward for a little mini series. I'd be happy with that, and test the waters. And once again, you can't begrudge Drew. Can't begrudge Frew for trying something new. Giant Size is obviously working for them. Let's try add something in there.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, then pull it. But yeah, at the moment, this fella is interested to see what happens, mainly because I've come to like the Shadow. And like I said at the start, I didn't think I was going to like Giant Size. I've ended up liking Giant Size and liking these characters. And so yeah, let's see what Nyx does.
Yeah, I'm very similar in the same boat. But if I am, again, just wearing my Phantom hat, I'm a lot like Dan, where we really don't care. We'd rather see more Phantom. But from a business point of view, so Phantom hat off. So from a business point of view, it does make sense. But I just thought it was worth raising it because we see Phantom titles being cancelled and then a new non-Phantom title being introduced. So I thought...
Is it being introduced in Giant Size, or is it going to be her own standalone comic?
Don't know.
My take on it was that she'd be introduced into a Giant Size. I might be wrong, but that was my assumption.
No, it says issue 1 out soon, right down the bottom.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Well,
So
we'll see.
If you're on YouTube, you can see that. We have posted that image up as well. So, yeah.
All right. Mindful of the time, we will move on. And the last comic that we have to review is...
Should we review it or should we do it as a standalone podcast? Purely because of the time.
All right. Well, okay. We can do that. A question without notice. You can edit this out if you like. No.
Yeah, sorry. I meant to actually say it before we re-recorded. Stephen, have you read Kennedy's Mission?
No, I haven't got it.
Okay. I've got a digital copy, so I'll re-forward it to you. Because we've gone on quite a while and
All right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. No worries.
Sorry, I should have said something before we
all good. All right. Okay, so that's been something of an epic review of comics and news, probably longer than we expected when we sat down. But you know what? It's been a pretty, I'm going to go blue here. It's been a pretty shitty week. And so it's just been really nice to sit down and talk about stuff that has not been the crap that we've had to deal with on a day-to-day basis and talk about Phantom Comics. And so we've probably got a bit more absorbed in the conversation than we really needed to. So anyway, I hope as a listener you've enjoyed getting absorbed in the conversation with us.
I know, we have.
All right. Yeah. Well, Stephen's still sitting in the boot of his car and it's just ticked over 1 a.m. where he lives.
Yeah, my bottom's it's a little bit uncomfortable now. I might have to just go into the back seat from now on. It might be
we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up. We won't make you sit there for very much longer.
I liked it when we go to those 1 hour podcasts that we started doing. They were all right.
I remember those.
Have you noticed that they were only around when you went and joining us, Steve?
You remember I did the last one I led went for an hour, dude.
Oh, okay. So in other words, it's all Dan's fault. Fair enough.
It probably is. It probably is. Mostly because I'm too polite and don't interrupt and let you keep talking.
There was a lot of divisive issues as well, which created a lot of energetic discussions. So
anyway, bring this baby home.
All right. Man. Anyway, so look, guys, guys and girls, anyone who's listening to this, obviously you're a fan of Fan if you're this deep in and you're still listening. So we thank you very much for your interest. If you are keen to support what we do, then please jump onto Patreon, patreon.com/Chronicle Chamber, or just go to chroniclechamber.com and look for the Patreon link at the top of the page there. There's lots of benefits, we think, from being a Patreon, whether it's being listed in the Bushfire book that we've just listed. We've talked about the card that is going to be a Patreon exclusive coming out, and of course the Patreon the Phantom Preservation Project, the P3, which is where we have a pretty large, it must be said, digital treasure trove of Phantom stuff that you can delve into. You can do that if you're a $5 a month Patreon. But certainly the way the dollar is at the moment, anyone who's a 1 or a 2 or whatever you can afford in the current climate, by all means, we absolutely appreciate it, and it means that we can keep bringing, well, whether it's quality content or not, we like it, coming your way. So there have been a bunch of new Patreons jump on board in the period of time since the last time we recorded, and so thank you very much to Terry Cray, Chris Sherlock, Eileen Herman, Guy Passant, Bonner. We don't have a last name for you. Thank you very much, guys. We do appreciate your support. There is that gift to be mailed out, so make sure that if you're a Patreon, that you update your postage details, or if you're new jumping on, make sure you fill those out for us. We do want to send a special shout out to a long-term patron and a massive, a quietly behind-the-scenes member of the Chronicle Chamber family, David Budds. He's one of the administrators with us on the Phantom Collector page on Facebook, and David is a long-term Phantom fan and someone who's been a friend of the podcast and a friend of the group for many, many years, and we love catching up with him every time we go to Sydney for the Supernova, the Leaf Hawk Memorial Bengala Explorers Club dinner. David hasn't been well lately. He's got his battles, and so just David, if you're listening to this, a hearty shout out from all of us here at Chronicle Chamber, and I'm sure that Steve and Jermaine would join in with me on that one.
Yeah, get well soon, buddy, and good luck.
Well, mate, all the best.
So if you're listening to this, I'm sure you're aware of our website, chroniclechamber.com, for all of your phantoming needs. If you'd like to have any input onto the show or anything else that we do, chroniclechamber@gmail.com is the email address that you need to be using. We're on across all of the social medias that 35 plus year olds are able to use. We don't have a TikTok account just as yet, but anyway, on Facebook we're Chronicle Chamber. Hang on, Steve's renegading.
Oh, have you seen that? Did the kids at your school do that?
Of course they do.
Oh my goodness! Your own yard.
The kids in my family do that.
Yeah, my kids aren't old enough for that yet. You're there on yard duty and think, what the hell are they doing? And then it's all this TikTok out there having a day. There's worse things.
We're not on TikTok just yet. Maybe when Angus grows a little bit older, he might take charge of that account for us. But there we go. Anyway, we're on Facebook at the moment, chroniclechamber.com. We're also, as I just mentioned, admin of the Phantom Collector group, which you can search. We're on Twitter at @chronicle_tweet or on Instagram at chroniclechamber. So please check us out in any of those platforms. You can subscribe if you've enjoyed what you've listened to. You can subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or any of the other any of the other podcast apps that may be available to you by your Android platforms or whatever. So thank you very much for listening to us tonight. Thank you very much, Jermaine. Thank you, Steve, especially so far into the future and the way that you've been able to stay up to be part of the podcast, guys. Really appreciate having a chat to you tonight.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and everyone, happy phantoming.
Happy phantoming, one and all.
Yep, absolutely. Happy phantoming, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
I didn't give a plug for the Bushfire book at the end. I should have probably done that, but that's all right. We said that right at the top.
I'll just keep that in.
Okay.
ChronicleChamber.com to buy a Bushfire book.
500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
The Phantom,
The ghost who walks,
the Phantom,
enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He fights